They say history doesn't repeat itself, but it certainly rhymes. In Japan, the tremors of the past aren't just echoes, they're warnings. Beneath the surface of the Pacific Ocean, hidden in the dark silence of the seabed, a deadly clock is ticking. It doesn't tick in seconds or minutes, but in pressure, in stress, in the slow grinding of one massive tectonic plate diving beneath another. The world isn't watching closely enough, but the scientists are. The prediction is not a matter of if, but when. Japan, one of the most technologically advanced and disaster-prepared nations on Earth, could soon face an event so colossal that its consequences would ripple across the entire planet. This is not science fiction or speculation. It's science, it's geology, it's coming, and it could destroy a part of Japan by 2050. Deep below the surface, around 4,500 meters under the Pacific Ocean, lies a formation so geologically dangerous its very name sends chills through seismologists, the Nankai Trough. It's not the deepest trench in the world, nor the most publicized, but it is one of the most feared. Running from Suruga Bay in Shizuoka Prefecture, past the coastal edges of the Kii Peninsula, and down toward the southern tip of Kyushu, this submarine fault line is where the Philippine Sea Plate relentlessly shoves itself beneath the Eurasian Plate. Over decades, sometimes centuries, this tectonic wrestling match stores a staggering amount of pressure. And then, without warning, that pressure is unleashed in an instant. An earthquake, monstrous in scale, rolling across the seabed and shaking the entire region above. What makes this particular geological setting so terrifying is its precision. Not randomness, but a cycle. The Nankai Trough has a history of producing mega-earthquakes approximately every 100 to 150 years, and it does so with frightening regularity. The last one occurred in 1946, a magnitude 8.1 quake that devastated Shikoku and the Kii Peninsula. Before that, there was the 1854 Ansei quake, and even further back the infamous Hoi earthquake in 1707, which reached an estimated magnitude of 8.7. These were not isolated incidents, but chapters in a larger pattern. A pattern that scientists now say is entering its next phase. The Japanese government isn't silent about the threat. In fact, it has issued one of the most sobering seismic forecasts in modern history. According to its own calculations, there is a 70 to 80% probability that a magnitude 8 to 9 earthquake will strike the Nankai region within the next 30 years. That window places us well within the danger zone. Experts call it the Nankai Trough Megaquake, and it's no longer a hypothetical. If triggered, it could cause over 300,000 deaths in the worst-case scenario, with millions displaced and entire cities left in ruins. That estimate doesn't include the aftermath: economic collapse, nuclear instability, food and water shortages, and a global chain reaction affecting everything from electronics production to international trade. What exactly causes this kind of earthquake to be so destructive isn't just its magnitude, though a 9.0 quake releases energy equivalent to millions of atomic bombs. It's the proximity to population centers. The Nankai Trough lies terrifyingly close to some of Japan's most densely populated and economically critical regions. Osaka, Nagoya, Shizuoka, and parts of Tokyo could all be in range. Worse still, these regions are coastal, making them vulnerable to another apocalyptic force unleashed by undersea earthquakes. Tsunamis generated by Nankai quakes aren't mere waves, they're walls of water. Historical records show that in 1707, waves reached up to 25 meters, obliterating towns, forests, and rice fields. Modern simulations suggest similar or even greater surges if the next quake is as strong or stronger. In these models, within 5 to 10 minutes of the quake's rupture, tsunami waves would begin to crash ashore. In places like Kochi, Wakayama, and Tokushima, the water could surge several kilometers inland, swallowing everything in its path. Homes, roads, schools, power lines. People would have mere moments to flee, if they're even able to. Early warning systems can buy time, but they can't stop a mountain of water. The stress points accumulating along the fault are being closely watched using seafloor sensors, GPS satellites, and computer modeling. These instruments tell a chilling story. The plates are locked, pressure is building, and when it releases, the energy will likely
A
be
series
channeled
of
along the
significant
full
earthquakes
700
that
kilometer
have shaped
stretch of
its
the trough.
geography and culture.
That means a rupture on the scale of the 2011 Tohoku earthquake, or worse. While that disaster occurred in the northeast of Japan and led to the infamous Fukushima nuclear crisis, the Nankai quake would strike far closer to the industrial heart of the nation. In small towns along the coastlines of Shikoku and the Kii Peninsula, local governments have distributed evacuation maps, posted signs pointing to high ground, and drilled communities in rapid response escape routes. But drills are simulations, and real disaster unfolds in chaos. In the event of the quake, it's not just the ground that moves, it's the entire support system of daily life. Roads split, power lines fall, fire breaks out in tightly packed urban centers, water mains burst. Entire neighborhoods are plunged into darkness. In such moments, timing is everything. Japan's earthquake early warning system is one of the most advanced in the world, capable of detecting the first wave of seismic activity, P waves, and issuing public alerts through smartphones, loudspeakers, and television before the stronger, more destructive S waves arrive. This can give people a window of 10 to 30 seconds to drop, cover, and prepare. In those seconds, lives are saved, but only if people react quickly, only if systems work as planned, only if structures can endure the shaking. But the shaking is only the beginning. The tsunami that follows has the potential to cause more damage than the quake itself. After the 2011 Tohoku disaster, tsunami research in Japan entered an entirely new phase. Scientists like Dr. Koshun Yamaoka have been working on complex fluid dynamics models that simulate how these waves form, where they go, and how they grow as they approach shallow coastal waters. His projections are terrifying. In a worst-case Nenkai scenario, waves could hit Kochi Prefecture within 7 minutes of the quake, leaving almost no time to evacuate. In some low-lying areas, the water could reach as far as 5 kilometers inland, inundating towns, power stations, refineries, and emergency shelters. Airports and ports along the coast would be rendered unusable. Emergency supplies could not be flown or shipped in. Rescue teams would be stranded. In essence, entire regions could be cut off from the rest of the country. These are not abstract models. They are based on field data and real-world disasters. Scientists have used the sediment layers left by past tsunamis to gauge the size and reach of historical waves. They've also found evidence of massive prehistoric events, ones that dwarf even the 2011 disaster, suggesting that the full capability of the Nankai Trough has not yet been experienced in the modern era. And that may be the most frightening truth. What's coming could be worse than anything Japan has faced before. Then there is the question of nuclear energy. After Fukushima, Japan shut down many of its reactors, but in recent years a portion of them have come back online to meet energy demands. Several reactors lie in the path of the projected tsunami, particularly in regions like Shikoku and Shizuoka. While new safety measures have been implemented, including taller seawalls and improved cooling systems, critics argue that no level of human engineering can be foolproof against a disaster of this magnitude. One reactor failure could lead to another nuclear emergency, releasing radioactive material into the environment and forcing mass evacuations. The economic cost would be immeasurable, the environmental toll incalculable. The ripple effects don't end at Japan's shores. The Nankai quake could produce a trans-Pacific tsunami capable of reaching as far as Taiwan, the Philippines, and Indonesia within hours, and even the west coast of the United States, Mexico, and parts of South America. While the wave intensity would be lower at such distances, harbors could still be damaged, ships tossed, and ports flooded. Hawaii's tsunami centers have already begun reevaluating their preparedness strategies based on Nankai simulations. Coastal cities in California and British Columbia might see unusual surges even with advance warning. The Pacific, once a source of connection, could become a conveyor belt for destruction. Meanwhile, the global economy would not be spared. Japan is the third largest economy in the world, and a significant percentage of global electronics, automobiles, and specialized machinery are produced in its industrial heartland. A quake affecting Osaka, Nagoya, and surrounding regions could cripple supply chains for months, if not years. Factories would shut down, shipments would halt. Semiconductor shortages, already a problem in recent years, would become catastrophic. Industries in North America, Europe, and Asia that rely on just-in-time manufacturing would be forced into costly delays. Markets would panic. Insurance industries would face unprecedented payouts. Japan's own GDP could shrink by trillions. This isn't just a Japanese problem, it's a global one. To mitigate the risk, the Japanese government has rolled out a nationwide strategy involving both top-down and grassroots efforts. Every September 1st, on the anniversary of the 1923 Great Kanto earthquake, Japan observes Disaster Prevention Day. Millions participate in drills, schools conduct simulations, companies train their employees on evacuation and first aid. Municipalities test communication networks, emergency kits including radios, flashlights, canned food, and water are distributed and restocked. And yet, officials admit, even this may not be enough. The Nankai quake is expected to be so vast, so
A series
prolonged,
of
and so
significant
complex
earthquakes
that
that
no
have
drill
shaped
can
its
fully replicate the scale of devastation. But perhaps the most sobering realization comes from the studies of human behavior in past disasters. Panic, misinformation, and hesitation often lead to more casualties than the disaster itself. In 2011, many victims of the tsunami were those who delayed evacuation, unsure of whether to believe the warning. Some returned home to retrieve belongings. Others waited for family members. This hesitation, in a tsunami scenario, is deadly. Researchers are now working on behavioral intervention strategies, psychological tools that can train people to act quickly and decisively in the face of an alert. It's a grim kind of education, but a necessary one. And what of Tokyo? While it sits further from the Nankai Trough than cities like Osaka and Kochi, Tokyo is not safe. The soil composition of the Tokyo Bay Area is vulnerable to a phenomenon known as liquefaction, where the ground behaves like a liquid under intense shaking. Skyscrapers may remain standing, but roads, underground utilities, and entire districts built on reclaimed land could sink or collapse. Subways could flood, fires could break out, communication lines could fail, and with over 37 million people in the greater metropolitan area, even a partial failure of infrastructure could cause chaos on a level no city has ever known. The haunting truth is that despite all this preparation, despite all the money, time, research, and engineering poured into resilience, the full impact of the Nankai megaquake remains unknowable. Scientists may predict probabilities, governments may draw contingency maps, citizens may rehearse drills. There's a silence that comes before the quake, an eerie stillness that lingers in the air, heavy and expectant. It's in that moment, seconds before the rupture, that everything hangs in a fragile balance. In offices overlooking Osaka Bay, in fishing villages pressed up against the edge of the Pacific, in the narrow alleyways of Shizuoka and the dense commuter trains of Nagoya, People will glance at their phones, hear a siren, feel a tremor, and realize the future is no longer theoretical. The earth is speaking in shudders and cracks. The megaquake has begun. It won't be over in moments. The initial rupture of a Nankai megathrust quake could last several minutes. That doesn't sound long, until you try to stand while the ground rolls, buildings sway, sirens blare, and objects crash around you for 200 uninterrupted seconds. That's 200 seconds of uncertainty, of lives being decided. Hospitals will go dark. Elevators will stop mid-floor. Hundreds of thousands of people will be caught mid-step, mid-sentence, mid-thought, as their world is reshaped beneath them. And in some cases, literally so, because land may sink or rise permanently by meters depending on the dynamics of the quake. Then comes the sea. The tsunami triggered by a Nankai rupture won't be a single wave but a sequence of towering walls of water, some separated by 10 or 15 minutes, each with the potential to push inland farther than the last. In some locations, the water will rise gradually, a deceptive flood that gives the illusion of calm. In others, it will arrive as a roaring surge, a churning mass of debris, cars, splintered homes, and seawater that crushes everything in its path. People will try to run. Some will succeed. Many won't. Emergency command centers across Japan will switch to crisis mode, but many of them, especially along the southern coast, will already be damaged or underwater. The country's vaunted Shinkansen bullet trains, capable of traveling over 300 kilometers per hour, will screech to a halt automatically the moment seismic activity is detected, thanks to sensors placed along the track. This automatic stop may save lives, but it also strands passengers in unfamiliar places, far from home, with no easy way out. In the worst-hit regions, transportation of any kind may become impossible for days. Helicopters will be grounded by strong aftershocks. Roads will be impassable due to landslides or collapse. In isolated towns, survivors may be trapped for over a week with no outside contact. The aftershocks, some potentially measuring magnitude 7 or higher, will rattle the region for weeks, a grim reminder that the Earth is still angry. These secondary quakes won't just cause psychological trauma. They will physically weaken already damaged structures, spark fresh fires, and complicate rescue operations. For emergency responders, it's a race against time. Injured people trapped under rubble may survive for days if found, but every hour lost reduces the odds. And in the chaos, decisions become cruel. Who gets rescued first? Who gets medical attention when supplies are limited? In a megaquake scenario, triage isn't just a medical term. It becomes a way of life. In the capital, even if Tokyo escapes the worst direct damage, the city's infrastructure will be overwhelmed. Shelters will be packed, fuel and food will run low, hospitals will operate beyond capacity. Communications may be jammed for hours, if not days, as mobile networks crash under the weight of tens of millions trying to call loved ones. International flights will be cancelled, ports will close, stock markets will plummet, global media will descend upon Japan, broadcasting scenes of devastation that ripple through the world in real time, and then begins the long, painful road to recovery. In 2011, it took Japan over a decade to rebuild the regions affected by the Tohoku quake, and that event, though massive, impacted only a portion of the country. A Nankai megaquake would affect multiple major urban and industrial centers simultaneously, from Tokushima and Wakayama to Nagoya and Osaka. Rebuilding won't be linear. It will require rerouting entire transportation systems, reconstructing energy grids, relocating communities, and dealing with environmental hazards like oil spills and chemical plant leaks. Insurance companies will struggle to process the sheer volume of claims. The government will be forced to borrow heavily to fund reconstruction. Foreign aid will pour in, but it won't be enough. The cost is already estimated to exceed $2 trillion. That figure could rise dramatically depending on the extent of infrastructure loss and the depth of economic disruption. But recovery isn't just a physical act, it's emotional, cultural, and deeply psychological. In the weeks after the quake, grief will settle in, not just for the lost lives, but for the shattered sense of normalcy. Schools may remain closed for months, festivals and cultural traditions will be paused or cancelled. Generations of family homes will vanish beneath mud and water. And in the collective psyche of Japan, there will be a renewed trauma, a reminder that no matter how advanced or disciplined a nation becomes, nature always has the final word. Yet even in such devastation, Japan has a history of rising, of finding order in disorder. The country's resilience is woven into its DNA. From the ashes of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, from the rubble of the 1995 Kobe earthquake, from the salted fields of the 2011 tsunami, Japan has always rebuilt. It has always reimagined itself. And so too in the wake of the Ninkai disaster. Survivors will organize, volunteers will flood in, students will become rescue workers. Retired engineers will return to the field. Cafes will hand out free meals. Temples will become shelters. Communities will share what little they have. The world will watch and perhaps learn. Because the Nankai quake, when it comes, will not just be a Japanese tragedy. It will be a global test of preparedness, response, and human endurance. Cities in other seismic zones, Los Angeles, Istanbul, Jakarta, Manila, Santiago, will be forced to look inward. Are their buildings truly ready? Are their early warning systems robust? Are their people mentally and physically prepared? The earthquake will echo not just through the Earth's crust, but through the policies and planning of every vulnerable nation on the Pacific Ring of Fire and beyond. Technology will also evolve. New forms of predictive modeling, driven by artificial intelligence and machine learning, may be inspired by the lessons of the Nankai event. Japan, a leader in robotics, may deploy autonomous machines for rescue missions, for mapping rubble, for delivering supplies to places humans cannot safely reach. Sensors, drones, satellites, each will play a role in the response. But so too will something less tangible, something older than any algorithm: empathy, human connection, the instinct to protect each other, the decision to act not in fear, but in courage. And one day, perhaps decades after the disaster, a child born in its shadow may walk the rebuilt streets of a city reborn. They may hear stories not just of destruction, but of heroes, teachers who saved entire classrooms, train conductors who stopped just in time, strangers who pulled each other from the water. That child will live in a country forever changed, but not defeated. Because the story of the Nankai megaquake will not end in 2050. It will stretch long into the future, a reminder written into memory, into architecture, into the rhythm of daily life. In Japan, earthquakes are not interruptions, they are part of the story. But even within that inevitability, there is choice, there is preparation, there is resistance, and most importantly, there is the unbreakable will to survive. The ground may break, but the people do not.